what drew me to the project, Margaret, was that I follow your stories religiously, as we all do. Actually, I was sort of your conductor down to Southern Ohio. I feel like sometimes up here, growing up in northern Kentucky and southern Ohio, that I have to be the goodwill ambassador for all things of that region. And so I'd grown up in Maysville, which is actually across the river from, pretty much right across the river from Ripley. Rosemary Clooney's hometown, for any of you who remember her, and George grew up not far away. And my father had a farm in Ripley. We lived in Maysville, but my father had a farm in Ripley, so I know the town well, and I love small towns, and I'm really rooted in that area. My father's family has been in southern Ohio and Maysville since the 1790s, and so I really love that section of the two states. And so Margaret is heading off on her adventure to go follow Joan on her adventure, and I just can't miss out on being part of this. And so I think that I had always had an interest. I mean, I had more of an awareness of the Underground Railroad growing up under the shadow of John Rankin, because everybody knew about John Rankin where I was from. Oddly enough, I can't ever remember having a field trip to his house, which the state actually had the foresight to turn into a national park back in the 30s. And if you've never been down there, I really recommend you to really go and experience it, because it's the tiniest house you can ever imagine. It's in the most peaceful setting you could ever imagine, because from his property you can see 5 different bends in the Ohio River. It's a beautiful setting. And in this tiny house where he and his wife had 13 children, 6 nieces and nephews that they raised, a fugitive slave girl that they had taken in and adopted as their own. They often were known to hide anywhere up to 12 fugitives at a time. And he is credited with helping 2,000 fugitive slaves to seek freedom. I mean, he was truly an extraordinary man. He went into financial ruin doing building schools so that black children could be educated. He was, after 20 years, he was drummed out of his own church because people thought he was dividing too much of his time going around the country talking against slavery. He was doing this in 1820, which was long before the formal anti-slavery mission started. And so William Lloyd Garrison, who's considered the father of abolition, thought John Rankin was his anti-slavery father. So that's how important this man is. And yet hardly anyone up this way knows anything about him. And so, but I was drawn, I was drawn to just get back in touch with my home, with my roots. And even though I loved the Underground Railroad piece, and I was captivated by how much people seemed to be inspired by Joan's story already at the very beginning. And the first few miles she had taken, people were already latching on to this story. And so I loved that piece, but I also, as being a small town, somebody from a small town, and to understand that tourism is now becoming how many of these small towns stay afloat, I thought, wouldn't this be a great way to get people to come visit some of these places? I mean, there are some really wonderful spots that Joan visited on her route, and for some reason I just had this notion that it would all work out and that there would be Underground Railroad material everywhere you went, and that's pretty much true. If you ever look at a map that Wilbert Siebert did in the late 1800s, there are Underground Railroad stops crisscrossing the state. And so it's just, that was my piece. I wanted people to really go and experience this for themselves.
I want to ask people at the end of the table, can you hear Mrs. Southgate? Because I can send her up there. I'll send her there. Okay, I think you need to go up there. And the next question is, as a reporter who got to cover your